Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to our coffee times to talk about horror. And today I have for you something a bit different. I have a book review.
It's coffee time!
I don't do these videos as often as I would love to, but I had to talk about the new Riley Sager book and I had to tell you about it. This is going to be, as always, a completely spoiler-free review. I'm just going to talk about the plot, about the author, about the kind of themes and stuff that you can find in the book without spoiling anything, especially in a Riley Sager book where there are multiple twists and turns to the story. So if you were considering picking it up but you have seen some people being really disappointed by it and you still want to know, you're still a little bit curious to see what the book is about, sit tight, grab your beverage of choice, and let's go. Today we're here to talk about Middle of the Night by Riley Sager, and this is his latest release. It is no surprise to anybody that watches my channel that I am a fan. I have enjoyed all of Riley Sager's books, some of them more, some of them less, but I remember vividly the first book I picked by the author, and that was The First Time I Lied. And I remember vividly exactly why I picked it up, and that is because I was participating in the Buzzword readathon and the word that we had was lie, and that is why I picked up The Last Time I Lied. And even though that book is not my favorite by Riley Sager, it gave me kind of like the curiosity to keep reading things by the author, because it was a very dark thriller, you know, a thriller that kind of merged a little bit into horror, and that's why I kept picking up his books. And I have read all of his books, but only the ones that have been published under the pen name of Riley Sager. The plot is fairly simple. We are in a small neighborhood where everybody feels very safe, everybody knows their neighbors, and two kids are having a sleepover. Ethan has invited over his friend Billy, and they are camping on a tent in their backyard, and it's supposed to be safe, they're supposed to be protective. They go to sleep, and the next morning, Ethan wakes up inside of the tent, but Billy is gone. There is no trace of the kid, and there is a big slash on the tent that was potentially made with a knife, and Billy is gone. Nobody has been able to find him since. Billy's case becomes an unsolved missing person case. 30 years later, Ethan moves back to his childhood home, and a lot of memories from that night come back, and he is sure that he can feel Billy's presence. We still don't know what happened to Billy. Is he alive? Is he not? Did he run away? Did someone kidnap him? Did someone kill him? We are all in the dark. And so is Ethan, but Ethan is determined to find out what happened to Billy. Ethan is a 40-year-old man, and he still has a lot of nightmares about that night. He keeps having the same recurring nightmare, and everything always takes him back to that night when Billy was taken. He almost feels like survivor's guilt, and that is why now, 30 years later, he's determined to get to the bottom of things. As he is investigating, we realize that Ethan is kind of like a morally gray character, and he is a little bit of an unreliable narrator because he himself cannot even remember what happened the night when Billy was taken. So we don't know why those memories are gone. Did he suppress it because of trauma? Did he do something himself? Did he see something? We don't know. We're just wondering, and I do enjoy myself an unreliable narrator. Apart from Ethan as our main character, we have the neighborhood almost as its own character, and we kind of see throughout the whole book who are the neighbors, who were the neighbors back then in 1994, and we go always back to the night where Billy was taken in 1994, and we get to see what everybody in the neighborhood was doing that night. We learn about the adults that used to live there. We learn about the kids that used to play with Billy, that were playing with him that summer, especially a day before he disappeared. And so it all becomes kind of like getting to know the neighborhood, the different people that might have seen something, that might have been involved, and it becomes kind of like your typical murder mystery. In this case, a disappearance mystery because he's missing. And it is kind of like one of those games where you have a lot of suspects and you need to try to figure out who is responsible. There is also talks about a stranger that came to the neighborhood around the time where Billy disappeared, so it could really be anything and anyone at this point. One of my favorite characters was Henry, who is a kid in the neighborhood now in the present in 2024, and the way that he would talk to the adults was just so cute and so much fun. Definitely Henry was one of my favorites. The story is told from a dual timeline. We are in 1994 when Billy disappeared, and we are in 2024, which is the present, and we get the story told from flashbacks from 1994 that take us back to a lot of the different people that live in the neighborhood, and they explain in detail what they were doing, what they saw the night that Billy disappeared. One of the biggest themes of the book is, of course, unsolved / cold cases, which are cases that they don't have enough evidence to keep going with the investigation. They're kind of like stalled. The definition says that a case becomes cold when all probative investigative leads available to the primary investigators are exhausted and the case remains open and unsolved after a period of 3 years. However, cold cases are reviewed to check and determine if new technologies or new forensic testing may be able to produce any potential new leads. So this is the case of Billy, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. I used to love the show Cold Case, and I'm very interested in unsolved mysteries. There is a Netflix TV show about unsolved mysteries, which I know they can be a little bit unsatisfying for a lot of people because they are unsolved mysteries, as the title implies, and so you're not gonna get closure by the end of it. You're just going to wonder what the hell happened. In Riley Sager's book, though, you are gonna get an explanation for everything that happened, just putting it out there. But when you start reading the book, Billy's missing case becomes a cold case because there is no progress in years. They don't have any new leads. They have nothing. In this case, even Billy's family has moved out of the neighborhood. Everybody has kind of given up hope of finding Billy dead or alive. But Ethan doesn't want to give up. This book also mentions ghosts a lot. So we know that Ethan claims that he's feeling Billy's presence in the house. So we wonder, is Billy coming back as a spirit? Is he a ghost? And also, when Billy was a kid, he was really interested in ghosts, and he talks about the book that he used to read about ghosts and spirits. He loved to learn about all the different types of ghosts and spirits and why they become what they become when they die. And I thought that conversation was really interesting, and it added a little bit of a supernatural, flavor to the story. So in this book, we're going to question the existence of ghosts, and I thought that was a really fun thing. At least I really enjoyed to read about it and to think about it myself. But it is a very interesting book because honestly, as I was reading it, even though certain things might be a little bit more obvious, I was kind of like clueless for the majority part of the book. I didn't know exactly which kind of route this book was going to take. Friendship. This book explores friendships and what happens when you're a kid and you have friendships, how those emotions are amplified and everything the other person does becomes a huge betrayal because that person is your bestie, and so they were not supposed to say that, or they were supposed to support you here or there, and they left you alone maybe. And so it is really cute and sad at times to see, Billy and Ethan's relationship when they were kids, and also their relationship with the other kids in the neighborhood. And it's interesting to see how the perspective changed when you're an adult and you look back at your childhood and the relationships that you had. So it was really interesting to me from a character depth point of view. When it comes to the writing style, I think that Riley Sager is very faithful to his own style and of course delivering multiple twists and turns in the story. But this book is different from his other ones. This one is different because it's the first book that he writes having a male main character. Normally all his books have a female main character, so this is the first time that we have Ethan, a male, as a main character, which I thought was really interesting. And this is also the first time that Riley Sager introduced a queer character into the story, which I very much appreciated, even though he used kind of like a trope that I think it's a little bit exhausted when it comes to queer characters, but nevertheless, I got a queer character in the book, so I'm not gonna complain. I think all the characters were well developed. I did enjoy personally the dialogue. I know a lot of people sometimes have issues with children in books because the way sometimes that the author makes them speak might not feel faithful to being like a 10-year-old kid like in this book. But honestly, I thought it was really well done, especially the character of Henry, who is also a kid in the book. I thought, you know, he was my best character when it comes to the way he talked and the way he behaved. Also, all of his books, even though they are thrillers with a little bit of infused horror in them, I feel like they carry a lot of emotional baggage, or the majority of his books. And this is probably the book that had the most emotional baggage when it comes to grief and loss and exploring all of that and estranged relationships. And you know, it had a lot of feeling. I think a lot of people, when they got to the end, almost cried because it got very emotional. So that is something that is also maybe a little bit more different, that this one was more intense when it comes to that. This book offers a lot of red herrings. There were many points in the book where the author would say something, introduce something that would make you suspicious. And I know that a lot of people are going to guess it probably quickly because some people are very talented at guessing thrillers. For me, honestly, I'm not even mad that I'm really bad at guessing plot twists, because then I get to get excited about them and get surprised. So when it comes to movies, I always guess what's going to happen. When it comes to books, I have a harder time trying to pinpoint killers or explanation for things. So I think it's good for me that I don't find books as predictable as movies. Personally, I really enjoyed these kind of dual timeline plus the multiple POVs. I really enjoyed especially the flashback chapters. I love to go back to 1994 and read from the different perspective of different characters that were there in the neighborhood the night where Billy disappeared, because it gives you the opportunity to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to see, okay, what did this neighbor see or hear? What did this neighbor do or hear? And it kind of, everything starts to make sense at some point, and then comes the big reveal. I found it eerie and atmospheric and really bingeable. I read this book in 2 sittings, in 2 days back to back, because I was really into it, and I personally love dual timelines, so that is always something that I really appreciate in books and tends to work really well for me. This book was filled with flawed characters. I feel like the majority of the characters here were morally gray, and something that I really enjoyed about it though is that everybody was a suspect in this book. And sometimes the characters will do things that are a little bit stupid or they're a little bit questionable, but honestly, when you're reading fiction and this type of books, especially thrillers, they tend to bend reality a little bit, so you have to suspend disbelief a little bit. When it comes to the horror, we have, of course, the unsolved mystery, the cold case of Billy's disappearance, and people started calling him the Lost Boy. But apart from that, Riley Sager combines kind of like supernatural elements with real-life horrors. So this is one of those books where anything is possible, any explanation at this point is possible. You don't know where the ending is gonna take you. I thought the way that Riley Sager explained Ethan in the neighborhood back 30 years later, being paranoid about feeling Billy and the things he did to try to figure out what was going on in the neighborhood, because a lot of freaky things started to happen. It felt really atmospheric, very creepy, and I personally really enjoyed it. Expect also, of course, several twists and turns in the story. There is one that happened fairly early on that I did not see coming so early, and I was surprised he gave us such a big kind of big news, such big news at the very beginning. But that also kind of kept it exciting because I'm like, okay, now that we know this, what else is gonna come? So I personally was very invested in this book. Riley Sager was born in Pennsylvania but now lives in New Jersey, and when he's not writing, he loves cooking and going to the movies. His favorite film is Rear Window or maybe even Jaws, but if he's honest, it's probably going to be Mary Poppins. So far, under the pen name of Riley Sager, he has published the following books: Final Girls, The Last Time I Lied, Lock Every Door, Home Before Dark, Survive the Night, The House Across the Lake, The Only One Left, and now, Middle of the Night. I know many people have complained that this book is boring and predictable, but what can I tell you? I really enjoyed it, and I do hope that you give it a chance. I must be maybe in the minority, and that is perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. But like I said, I read this book in 2 days because I was really invested and I really enjoyed the story. It might be because, you know, the kids and the summer and that kind of like Stephen King vibes that I always get from books like that, and an unsolved mystery, and I loved the way that the ending was delivered. So for me, this was a great book. Overall, I really enjoyed the conclusion to the story, the way that things were revealed and explained, and Henry is always going to have a spot in my heart, as well as Billy and the kids that were playing that summer. I really like to see that, you know, that kind of Stranger Things vibe, Stephen King vibe. So I'm just here to kind of promote this book. Just kidding, you guys, but this book has received so much backlash by some, you know, well-known booktubers that I just wanted to wave a little like white flag and kind of let you know my feelings, because, you know, we all have very different reading taste, and even though this is not my absolute favorite by Riley Sager, it's probably up there, to be honest. I hope that you enjoyed this spoiler-free review of the book. Let me know down below if you have read it, and if so, if you enjoyed it or not. And also, if you've read more than one Riley Sager book, let me know which one has been your favorite so far. I think for me, my favorite still is Lock Every Door, but we shall see if that changes in the future. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. Please consider joining my Patreon to support me and the channel, and I hope to see you all, as always, in our next coffee time. Bye!